This is Steve, and welcome to Module 4. I'm so excited to be spending this time with you, and I'm excited that you've made it this far. And when I say you've made it this far, I'm not just talking about starting Module 1, but I'm going back to the beginning of time. I'm going back to the fact that you are a 1 in 400 trillion chance to actually be born. And then you were born into a world of 7.5 billion people. Of those 7.5 billion people, less than 1% actually understand what their vision is and what their true purpose in life is. And so you have gone through 1 to 400 trillion. You're now in the top 1% of 7.5 billion. I want you to know you're doing amazing. You're doing great. And today we're going to simply bring it all home. So last week, we really talked about the paradigms. We've gotten our vision established. We're beginning to vibrate on the frequency of the vision. We're beginning to think like the person who's already done and accomplished that particular purpose. But there's been some paradigms, some thought processes, some things that have really held us back. It reminds me of an old adage of a frog that if you put it in hot water and boiling water, it will immediately jump out. But if you put that frog in a neutral temperature, but you incrementally, just very slowly begin to increase the temperature, the frog will never leave. And that's really like a lot of different areas of our life. Maybe it's the job we're not in love with. We're dealing with the boss that we don't like. Maybe it's the toxic relationship or kind of how we treat ourselves and our body or our own internal negative self-dialogue. Day after day, we're just turning up the heat incrementally until really we're boiling over and we're not really sure what happened. Now, there is one single mental faculty that you can do, and you can do it right now, and it will take you less than a second to begin to really create the change. And that is simply to make a decision. The word decision literally means to cut off. In other words, we're going to cut off every other possibility. So you have your vision, you have your purpose, you have a life that you really want to live. You have to be able to come to a place where you say, there's nothing else that's acceptable to me. This is the only option I'm going to accept, regardless of circumstance, situation, or condition. As we've talked in previous modules, the temptation is to get focused in on the condition. These are the reasons why I cannot, rather being 100% focused on the reasons why we can. There is a great story of Captain Cortez, who back in the 1500s landed at Veracruz ready to take over the Mexican army. And he was completely outnumbered, completely outgunned. There really wasn't a whole lot of options for him to actually win. And so he ordered the ships to be burned. Burn the ships. In other words, he cut off any other possibility. He made a decision. We're either going to win and conquer this particular land, or we're going to die. There was no plan B. And when it comes to your vision, you have to get rid of the plan B and say, I am the person that's going to accomplish this in my life, regardless, again, of circumstance, situation, or condition. Now, as we make that decision, we always want to make a decision in the now moment. We want to understand the power of this now, and this is really the only time we have. We can never go back to the past. We cannot somehow float into the future. So what we have is this present moment. And there's two things I have to do to really create the change that I want. I have to get decided that I'm the person doing the thing. Now, what happens is most people stop there. I'm going to do this, I'm decided, but that's not a decision. We have to anchor that decision with some form of action step. Understand that a decision without action is not a decision at all. One of my most favorite books, and maybe a book that's had the most influence over my life, is a book called Think and Grow Rich, written by Napoleon Hill. And in chapter 8, the actual title of that chapter is simply Decisions. And there's two things in that chapter that I want to point out to you. He had measured 31 different causes for actual failure. And in identifying the 31 causes, he then took those 31 causes and he ran it through an analysis of over 25,000 people that had experienced failure. The thing that topped the list, that headed the list significantly above anything else, was simply a lack of decision. He goes on to talk about the most successful people in the world. And remember, he was interviewing presidents, the top CEOs, people that ran large companies, multi-millionaires and billionaires of that day. And what he consistently found among the most successful people was that they were quick to make a decision and then slow to change the decision they had made. The converse of that was also true, that unsuccessful people, people who had not really gained much wealth, were very, very slow to make decisions and then quick to change the decision that they had made. So there are three things that happen when we get really decided. The first thing that happens is that decisions actually shape the way we think and the ideas that we have. When we make a decision, it actually wires and fires new neuron connections in our brain. And so as we make certain decisions, our thinking processes actually change. Now, we've put off the how many times throughout this particular course, but this is where the how really comes into play. That when I'm in alignment with my vision, when I'm decided that I'm doing this thing no matter what, I'm going to begin to see things from a completely different perspective. The second thing a decision does is it really determines how we perceive the world. On your brainstem, there's something called a reticular activating system. Now that's a long word. I'll actually tell you a funny story about that in just a moment. But the reticular activating system is a filter on your brain that filters out information that you really don't need to know. For example, let's say the air conditioner is on in the background. You don't really hear that the air conditioner is on until someone points that out to you. If your brain took in everything going on, every form of stimulation, your brain would literally go crazy. And so when we get decided, what we're doing is we're narrowing down the bandwidth, if you will, of what your reticular activating system is actually allowing in. Now, I said I would tell you a funny story because this word is actually the most embarrassing public speaking moment of my life that I'm going to confess to you. It was probably 15 years ago that I was teaching on this subject. And I don't like to have to say reticular activating system because as I did a moment ago, I stumble over that word. And so there's a nice abbreviation for that, which is RAS. So I'm actually speaking in front of a large church organization, and to abbreviate that so I wouldn't stumble over the word like I just did with you, I said, so your ass is responsible for the teaching. And the whole place breaks out laughing. And I'm thinking, what did I do? I'm just talking about something on your brainstem. And a friend of mine there said, Steve, say that really slow. And I said, okay. So now I will stumble over reticular activating system long before I will abbreviate it. But understand, when we get decided, we narrow down the bandwidth of what we're going to allow into our brain, so our perception of the world is actually different. So the third thing that really getting decided does is it activates the power of coincidence. Matter of fact, it was Ralph Waldo Emerson who said, when we make a decision, the universe conspires to work on our behalf. What does he exactly mean by that? There is an infinite intelligence. Again, the name we put on that is completely, totally up to you. But there is a power greater than myself. And when I get decided and I'm in alignment with my vision, that power is going to bring things that almost appears to be coincidence. As an example of that, you might be thinking of a friend, someone you haven't talked to in a while, and you think, I wonder how they're doing. I hope things are going okay. And the next day or that night, you get a phone call or you get a text message that, hey, I just thought I would check in with you. You got on an energetic level, a vibration. Remember, everything is energy. Thoughts are energy, and they have power. So when we get decided, we activate that power of coincidence, where it seems like things are just happening. It could be you meet someone that gives you a business card and it's for the service that you desire or something that's going to help you launch that new business. But get decided and watch coincidence up level. Theodore Roosevelt said, in any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is you do the right thing. The second best thing to do is to do the wrong thing. And then the absolute worst thing to do is to do nothing at all. Always be taking a step in the direction of your dream. If you don't feel like there's an action that you can take that's going to move you closer to your dream, remember the words of Thomas Edison, who said, when it doesn't appear that there's any more steps left to take, you are wrong. There's always a step. So we simply ask ourselves that question: what step can I take from where I'm at with what I have? Let me give you an example of that. If I was coaching someone and they said, my biggest dream in the world is to go to Australia on vacation. And I asked them, why haven't you been to Australia? And they said, I don't have the money to go. So what step could that individual take to get that Australian vacation? Well, we could look at what hotels we might stay at, or how much are the plane tickets. We can begin to plan out and take steps and get in the energetic vibration that I'm already decided that I'm the person that's going to Australia. Remember, we talked about the be, do, have paradigm. Don't get stuck in the have, do, be. If I had this money, I would turn around and do this, and then I would be that individual. You need to be it first, and then that second, the do. What step can I take from where I'm at with what I have? And then we generate the resources that we need to bring it into fruition. As we close out Module 4, I want to tell you a story that happened to me not that long ago. It was actually the end of last year. I was preparing for Thanksgiving, and I had decided to go to Cabo San Lucas on an invitation for Thanksgiving dinner. And I'd been thinking about selling some property that I own there for quite some time. And so before I ever jumped on the plane, I had reached out to some friends in Cabo San Lucas that had hooked me up with a real estate agent. And they told me it was a year and a half, roughly, on average, to sell the property in the area in which I own property. And so for a moment, I was like, man, a year and a half? I just want to get rid of this. I just want to dump this particular property. Well, kind of on a side note, there's a particular practice I do every year around Thanksgiving. For the first couple weeks coming up to Thanksgiving, each morning I write down 5 things that I'm grateful for. Now, those can never overlap. I can't be grateful for the same thing day in and day out. So I end up with a list of 75 or 100 things that I'm actually grateful for before I'm done with that exercise. So I was feeling this tremendous sense of gratitude. I'd shared with you before that gratitude really carries the highest vibration. And so the more we can be in an energetic state of gratitude, the quicker we're going to bring this dream into fruition. And so out of this state of gratitude, I really begin to think, what if this was easy? I know common hours thinking says it's going to take a year and a half for me to sell this property, but does that mean it really has to? What if it was easy? What would it look like? And I begin to try it on. What if I just happened to meet someone when I got to Cabo? What if I just ran into somebody who wanted to buy property in my area? What does that kind of look like and feel like? And so I began to come from that energetic state for the last few weeks before I left on the plane to Cabo San Lucas. So on the plane to Cabo, and I'm excited, I'm going to see some old friends, we're going to have a great Thanksgiving dinner, and I've got a meeting with a real estate agent the day after Thanksgiving. And so it was Wednesday night that we were flying in, and tremendous storms. There was lightning and thunder, and we're coming down for landing, and the plane actually pulls up and turns around, and the whole aircraft gets a little bit nervous, what's going on? And so we had to go to a completely different destination for them to land and really wait for the storm to pass. So an hour or so later, docked on another airport somewhere, we began our ascent back into Cabo San Lucas. So the closer that we arrive, again, the lightning, the thunder, it's all happening. And as we're beginning to drop down onto the runway, we actually get struck by a shot of lightning, something that I've never experienced before in all my travels over the years. Well, I was a little bit nervous at first. Holy crap, we just got hit by lightning. But quickly I saw that the plane was still flying and everything was okay. But that really wasn't the perception of the rest of the aircraft. There was a lot of hysteria. People were crying, babies screaming, ladies yelling, all that stuff. And so as we began to kind of laugh and joke just with the people that were sitting next to me, because we saw that everything was okay, we finally ended up touching down. And I remember very clearly as I stepped off the plane how grateful I was to be alive. I really accentuated my gratitude that much more because I was so grateful that we were there safely. So now I'm in this tremendous state of gratitude. That night, I happened to run into a friend of mine, and we were talking, and I told him that I was going to sell this property in Rolling Hills, where my property was. And he said, oh, I know someone out there who's selling property, and a matter of fact, I think he has a buyer who's actually looking to buy property there. So I ended up taking his number, called him the day after Thanksgiving, and I'll admit I was a little nervous. I had some thoughts of, is this legitimate? Is this really legal? Am I going to be doing something or involved in something I shouldn't be involved in? So what step can I take from where I'm at with what I have? I simply took the steps that I could take. I went out and met this gentleman. I, followed through with the process and such. It turned out I ended up selling my property in literally one day. The next day, the buyer went out and looked at the lot. He fell in love with it, and the deal was closed. So what I'm saying to you is this. As you put your dream together, it doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be complicated. If you get in alignment with the vision, you get on the frequency of a life that you would truly love, you vibrate energetically from that position, you are going to see great results and great manifestation in your life.
All right, that wraps up the series on discovering your purpose. I just kind of wanted to take a quick moment and summarize up a few things. Really, you can encapsulate that entire series into 3 concepts. One is establishing a vision. This is what I really want my life to look like. Then secondly, getting decided that I'm the person doing the thing, no matter what. And then 3, taking action. And this is a big one. Listen, if all you do is watch YouTube videos, you might not see a lot of transformation. But when you take these principles and apply them to your life, it's amazing how quickly, how fast you can see tremendous transformation take place in your life. And so let me just give kind of a shout out, a thank you to each one of you that have gone through this series, that have liked my videos, that have subscribed to this channel. That really helps get this information out to more and more people so that more and more people can be touched and transformed. So with that, guys, have a blessed day. Much love, peace, namaste.